Warning, this episode dives into how drugs affect the human mind, both physically and maybe spiritually. We are not promoting or endorsing any substances. This is for educational purposes and discussion only. Don't do drugs. Stay in school. Welcome to Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. Ladies and gentlemen, mystery seekers, musers, conspiracy theorists, interdimensional philosophers, seekers of truth, comparative mythology enthusiasts, and last but certainly not least, all of you that desperately cling to your confirmation bias. Whether your interest is Atlantis to Zeus, cuneiform to quantum physics, we tackle it all from our quantumly entangled castle, tucked away in the ancient flood-battered Central Pangaean mountain range. We are the one-stop shop for mystery, history, and comparative mythology. We're a podcast dedicated to exploring the ancient, mysterious, and unknown with logic and reason, and where we also theorize the geometric fourth dimension exists and is the spiritual. Only trigger warning for this episode is a logical conversation on drugs. So if applying the Socratic method on fringe topics is disturbing to you, you'll want to turn off the podcast now. All right, that's all I got. Over to you. Tell us about drugs.
Thank you for unmuting me.
Yeah, I forgot. Sorry.
How dare you silence the queen? Anyways.
I know. I apologize, Your Majesty. I'm not allowed to silence the Shariatum. Speaking Akkadian.
Yeah. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying.
Yeah. You're doing good so far.
I really like your cold open.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Don't do drugs.
Yeah, don't do drugs. This is purely... I have to throw that in there. In all seriousness, though, this is purely speculative,
Yes.
because we do have precedent for the ancients using drugs and all sorts of substances. So we need to ask if there is something about drugs that affects the connection to the spiritual, but by no way, shape, or form are we encouraging the usage of drugs or in any capacity. This is just a purely hypothetical, logical conversation that we're looking to have.
Yep.
But yeah, over to you.
All right. I think I'm not going to get into any one specific drug. I'm just going to say about how they work.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. However you want to run this episode.
Because if I were to go into all the different types of drugs, we would do like a 5-episode series, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. No, it's understandable.
But yeah, so yeah, we are going to dive into something that affects millions. And we're going to learn about how drugs rewire the brain, create loops of tolerance and withdrawal, and lead to addiction. Yeah, but here's a question. What if the patterns of addiction aren't just chemical, but dimensional?
I like that because it adds a different layer to like the Alcohol Anonymous approach of like labeling yourself as an addict.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, maybe it's like, you know, you're already born the way that you are. And so struggling with an addiction isn't your fault. And so on top of that, it's like you add in that spiritual dimension to it. And it's like you might be struggling with something on a whole nother level than you even realize.
Yep. And that's partially why a lot of AA, or they have Narcotics Anonymous as well, NA, but
yeah.
But that's why they heavily rely on spiritual aspects for that program.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, that actually kind of supports that question that you put forward here.
Yeah, but anytime that you have, I guess, drug counseling, addiction counseling, I should say, but anytime that you have that, there is usually a spiritual aspect to it as well to help you recover. But we'll get into that, I believe. Maybe.
Okay.
I can't remember if I have it in my notes.
If not, I did, like you had to do for your master's program, I had to also go to an AA meeting in college for my undergrad for psychology because I looked into addictions. That was years ago, though. And I'm just realizing how rusty I am in all my college stuff because I was trying to figure out Akkadian math earlier. So I was kind of realizing, I'm like, man, I'm rusty on math. But so anywho, yeah, I can probably fill in, hopefully, a couple blanks at least.
Math, not meth.
Yes, math, M-A-T-H. It's funny because like when I do like the TikTok videos a lot of times and I do the auto transcribe for the captions, I'll say like the phrase like stop believing myth on myth and it'll translate one of the myths as math. It's like, no, bad TikTok.
Stop it.
Bad TikTok. Anyway.
Yeah, but that's kind of the opening question here. That's kind of what we're going to be talking about. Drugs.
Don't do them.
Don't. Please don't. So first we are going to talk about the central nervous system. So the central nervous system, or the CNS, is the body's command center. So it manages receiving, processing, and responding to new sensory information. And the brain and spinal cord work together to coordinate movement, cognition, emotions, and autonomic functions like breathing and heart rate. The fundamental units of the CNS are neurons, specialized cells that communicate through electrical impulses and chemical signals in a process known as neurotransmission. So when the drugs are introduced, they disrupt this communication, and it leads to a couple of different cognitive and physical impairments, depending on what you took. So the CNS is highly sensitive to the chemical imbalances and external influences. So understanding these processes actually helps to grasp the complexity of addiction and how substances alter brain functioning at the cellular level.
And any of our listeners that have consumed alcohol over the age of 21 in America, and I think it's like 18 in most European countries or something, or 16 even, I forget, will know how quickly alcohol can even have an effect like on how you feel. Even, just a little bit of alcohol can disrupt that, central nervous system as a substance, alcohol, but, it's a legal substance.
Yeah. Yeah, it all depends on what you took, whether it was a depressant or
stimulant or hallucinogen. There's like a lot of different categories. I'm sure
barbiturates.
I'm sure you're going to get into all of that at some point at least. No, okay.
I might. I don't think I am, because there's so many different kinds of drugs.
Yeah, we'll hit some of the key ones here. Alcohol is actually a stimulant. That's what a lot of people don't realize.
It's both. It's both a stimulant and a depressant.
Because it relaxes you at first, and then it stimulates after. Yep. And so that's why, like, if you have a lot of alcohol, you might be able to fall asleep when you have it, and then like you wake up like partway through the night or something, and you're like wired, or why once like the tipsiness wears off a little bit, you're like wired and you can't fall asleep. And then caffeine is a stimulant. Hallucinogens would be like, is it LSD, I think, where you see like the dragon on the fridge or whatever. I'm just kind of guessing on your episode. I apologize. I just want to kind of give listeners.
Yeah. So if you Google the different types of drugs, it'll give you a very loose layout of the different types. I forget the name of the organization, but if you look up like the classes of drugs, it actually gives you an entire list of drugs. I guess I should say illicit substances, anything illegal, it's on that list, and it tells you if it's a class 1, class 2, etc. And it tells you what kind of drug it is, the name, and everything like that. So I'll have to find that.
Yeah, and then there's like stuff like meth that just makes you feel like really powerful. And so
PCP as well.
Yeah, so I'd argue stuff like that might not be as spiritually connected, and it's just more of a physical like boost, potentially. It depends how we want to split hairs on this. It depends how we want to split hairs on consciousness in general too. If we define consciousness as like spiritual, like dualistic. Sorry,
No, yeah. You're good. You're good. You're posing good thoughts, and I'm glad that you're bringing that up, because you're relating that to the other episode that I led about consciousness. So I'm glad you're doing that.
What was it like? Is it dualism theory, and then I forget what the other one was, but it's just the strictly physical, whatever those labels are. It's been a long week, and it's been
Do you want me to pull it up?
No, it's fine. Okay. You can just keep going on your episode. I'm sorry. I'm trying to connect everything here for the listeners.
No, you're doing good though. I'm glad you made that connection, because I don't even think I thought to put that in there, but
You're good. I got you. Patterns is my thing.
You always got me.
Yeah. I just put my hand on her leg.
You just like firmly grasped my knee. Anyways.
Inside scoop to our relationship here a little bit. We're goofy.
We're very goofy and weird.
Anyway, I derailed you. So
yes,
let's keep going
so
here.
that was it for the CNS. If you well, do you want to keep going?
Yeah, we can keep going.
Okay.
One more subject and then we'll do a break.
All right. So how do drugs work in the brain? So when the brain encounters a rewarding stimulus, so any illicit substance is pretty much a rewarding stimulus. It's not quite good for you, but it's called that.
Mm-hmm. It's rewarding in a brain chemistry sense. You get like dopamine or some equivalent in the brain.
It depends on what you took.
Right. It's not always. You're good. It's just a headset.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having issues. But yeah, it depends on what you took. It could be dopamine. It could be GABA. Could be numerous things.
Right.
But yeah, so several structures work together to reinforce the behaviors that are essential for survival and well-being, like eating, socializing, reproduction. Those are all considered rewarding stimuli as well.
Mm-hmm.
So first, the VTA produces and releases dopamine. So you were spot on there. And then naturally, the VTA responds to signals from other parts of the brain, but many illicit substances directly increase the dopamine production or release. Do you have that?
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I'm not losing.
Nope, you're good.
So there's two reward pathways in the brain. A lot of people think it's just one, but it's technically two working together. So the first one is the mesolimbic pathway. So that begins from the VTA to the nucleus accumbens, the NAC. And that's responsible for motivation, reinforcement, and reward processing. And then the other pathway is mesocortical pathway, and that's from the VTA to the PFC, prefrontal cortex, and that controls decision-making, impulse control, and working memory. So the euphoria caused from a drug's administration causes the nucleus accumbens to send inhibitory GABA neurotransmitters to the VTA to reduce dopamine release. So over repeated use, the brain develops hypoactivity in the prefrontal cortex, lower dopamine receptors in the VTA, and lower dopamine release from the NAC.
Basically, the TLDR, too long don't read of that, is that if you do a lot of drugs, it affects your reward response system and overloads it and desensitizes it, basically, yeah?
Yeah. So basically, the longer you take a drug, the lower dopamine receptors and release that you have.
That's why you'll see a lot of people do like fasting and detoxes, like a phone detox and all of that, where they'll take a couple of days and they go away from it to kind of reset the dopaminergic system so that you are not as numb to dopamine as like you are becoming by use of like your phone or drugs or whatever. And again, this is broadly speaking because dopamine is released by lots of different things. The dopaminergic system is triggered by a lot of different things. It could be drugs, it could be phone addiction, it could be, reading a book.
Thank you for bringing that up. Because it's not just substances, it could be process addictions, like you said. So any behavioral addiction, that's included in this. But we're specifically talking about drugs. But that's a good point you made.
Yeah.
All right.
It's helpful. I actually took classes on this in college
it
too.
Is.
You want to take a break or you want to roll into...
I have like a little...
Oh, okay, go ahead. Perfect.
A couple more sentences. But brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF protein, is remodeled. So this causes the reinforcement of cravings by lowering potentiation of synapses in the amygdala and hippocampus.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds very official. I like it.
Yeah. If you haven't noticed, a lot of what I'm saying, I this is like the exact wording that I used for papers and stuff. So
Yeah. You did a whole class on this for your
I
master's
did.
already. So
I
you
did.
just kind of reusing notes, which is nice.
Notes, papers, presentations, all that good jazz. But so this enables the brain to develop substance-associated cues, synaptic plasticity, and neurogenesis. So the hypothalamus, the structure responsible to maintain homeostasis in the body, is rewired to increase activation. So all of these processes work together to create compulsive drug-seeking behavior, leading to addiction.
And there you have it. And that's why drugs are dangerous. Don't do drugs. Stay tuned, and we will return in just a moment. I do not have a caffeine addiction because I can quit anytime I want to. Here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix, we have returned to talk to you more about addictive substances, but it's definitely not caffeine.
Literally just like a couple hours ago, we were driving, and I need my focus aid.
I mean, that has like 100 milligrams of caffeine, so it's literally half a cup of coffee. And then it's like a bunch of B vitamins and stuff like that as well, and amino acids for brain function.
That's fair.
So it's more like I need food to survive kind of a thing. Like I need the right type of vitamins. Anywho.
All right. So now that we've talked about how the drugs interact with the brain, how they hijack natural systems to produce intense feelings of pleasure, calm, or altered perception. But that's actually only the beginning. So now we're going to talk about tolerance, withdrawal, and addiction. So because the brain is smart and it doesn't like being hijacked, tolerance is the brain saying, I've seen this before. You're going to need more to get my attention.
Okay. I like that. That's a good way to put it.
So if a drug floods the brain with dopamine or another neurotransmitter over and over again, the brain starts to downregulate. So that just means that it reduces the number or sensitivity of receptors that respond to that chemical.
Right. And that's basically what we had already said, where like your brain numbs itself to it. And I'm just putting it in layman's terms because I like things simple.
Yeah. It basically just means that the threshold becomes higher and higher to achieve the same result.
And this is part of the reason why people risk doing overdoses when they do drugs, is because you need more and more to get the effect, and people kind of realize that and preempt and then just take too much.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Yep. So now that we've talked about tolerance, imagine your brain has adjusted so much to the presence of a drug that it depends on it just to function, quote unquote, normally. When you stop taking it or even miss a dose, the balance collapses. That's withdrawal.
Right. And that makes sense.
So that's not just discomfort, but it's the body and brain panicking because the substance it was relying on to function is suddenly gone.
And depending on the substance, the withdrawal, if you have a high enough dependency on it, and depending on the amount and the substance, could actually kill you if you just go cold turkey. And that's why you sometimes, for like some withdrawal, like you have to actually like do a detox and ease your way off of it.
It does depend on how long you've been using, how much you've been using, like you said. But there's been a lot of people. I'm probably overgeneralizing right now. I don't know the exact amount, like per year, but
there's a number of people that struggle with it because there's a number of people that have drug addictions. Quick aside here for a second, though, I will say I'm actually like thinking about something here, and I'm thinking about like Buddhism in terms of how Buddha said that everything in moderation, and that he lived in extreme poverty and extreme wealth. Like, he went from a princely life to literally eating a grain of rice in a year, more or less, I think is how it goes. I don't know if that's an exaggeration or not. And what he said is the middle path is the best, meaning that moderation is key. And now I'm, again, not condoning drug usage, but like the idea of addiction indicates that is out of balance. Your life is out of balance. Your spirituality almost is out of balance. So if you're addicted to anything, whether it's drugs or literally anything else,
Process addictions.
yeah, any kind of process addiction, anything like that, it's kind of, I would argue, almost throwing you out of balance spiritually in a sense, where you are relying on stuff to an extreme degree to function, and that messes with your internal spiritual equilibrium. So, and I wouldn't take that to a huge extreme and panic over like, needing caffeine every day to function or stuff like that. But it does add some layer for thought for self-improvement to say, hey, are there things that I'm depending on that aren't even drugs that maybe I shouldn't? Like maybe I'm addicted to scrolling on my phone for 5 hours a day, and that's a problem, But
Right.
to each their own. That's just food for thought for self-reflection and self-improvement for those out there that are interested in that, because I am.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are addicted to caffeine, but they wouldn't admit it.
Mm-hmm.
I've met people like that. I have a old coworker, I'm not going to mention any names, but old coworker who early in the morning, I was up and at my shift at 6 a.m. and this coworker comes in with a big bottle of Mountain Dew. And they said, I need this to function. And if I don't have it, I get headaches and shaky and all that. And then they asked me, do you think I'm addicted to caffeine? And I just went, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
I felt so bad, but I had to be honest. I was like, yeah, you're addicted.
Yeah. I mean, I have my caffeine every day, and I very much like having my caffeine, but like depending on like the type of job I've had and like what year and everything, I've gone without, especially when I'm like having to be outside in summer heat. I will just like forgo the caffeine, and it isn't the most pleasant thing to go without caffeine, but I will just stop for a couple weeks and I don't have a problem, and then I'll come back to caffeine again whenever like it's not a risk to like having heat stroke or anything like that. And so I feel like, all jokes aside, I feel like that is a good balance to have, is where it's like, okay, yeah, you have it every day and you like to have it, but I can also go without it, and I've demonstrated I can go without it if I really need to.
I could stop if I wanted.
Yeah. I can stop anytime I want.
I probably shouldn't joke about it, but
Yeah, I think you're more addicted to caffeine than I am.
I only have one coffee a day.
Okay.
Well, sometimes a second one, but that depends on our daughter and if she's being feral or not.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
we love our child, but yeah.
Oh, no, she's awesome. Like, she's great.
20-month-old, so we're in the terrible 2 territory. Anywho,
we're starting to get there.
We'll get back on track here.
But yes, so next would be addiction. So that's not just using drugs. So if you see or of somebody using drugs, that doesn't mean they're addicted.
Oh, okay,
yeah. So addiction is more just the rewiring of the brain's reward system. So the chronic relapsing condition where drug use becomes compulsive even when it causes harm. So the signs of the DSM, I'm going to try to name some of them. I don't have my book in front of me, but it'll cause harm and you do it anyways because you can't, quote unquote, help it. You go to serious lengths just to get the substance. Could affect, job, even daily functioning. So
I think another one too is that it affects daily functioning to an extreme level. Like how I referenced scrolling your phone for 5 hours a day. It's clearly going to disrupt your life. But if you just scroll for like 15 minutes every time you go to the bathroom, like once a day or twice a day or something like that, then probably not addicted. But if you're scrolling for 5 hours on your phone, you're addicted. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and
I'm addicted to water. I cannot live without it.
I don't know if that's... Well, there is a thing of drinking too much water, and you could...
I definitely don't drink too much.
Well, yeah. You could stop if you wanted. I need to stop saying that.
I could stop for up to 3 days, and then I'm in trouble.
All right. So next is the fourth dimension. So what if addiction isn't just biological? What if it's dimensional? So people caught in addiction often describe feeling like they're stuck So repeating the same behaviors, revisiting the same emotions, reliving same pain. They're not moving forward, they're circling, and the past pulls at them, like the memory of the first high, the escape, the relief, and then the future feels like terrifying or unreachable. Like, how do I live without this substance or process addiction? And the present just is like a repeat. So wake up, crave, use, numb, repeat. In that sense, addiction resembles something that you'd find in like almost a science fiction. Like a fold in the timeline, like kind of like the Matrix. I like using the Matrix as an example. Like a glitch in the experience of living forward.
Matrix is in the MQuad name.
Yes, it is. I did that on purpose.
Yes, you did. Totally. I see it in your notes.
Don't look at my notes.
I was just covering for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, don't.
Okay.
Don't look at them. So addiction might be a shadow of something higher dimensional, so a spiritual, psychological, or temporal distortion that we can't fully perceive but deeply feel. And then this doesn't replace science, obviously, but it expands on it.
Yes.
I'm very much into like the spiritual as well as science. I like both sides of it, so that's why I'm kind of taking this and running with it like that.
No, I get it. And I think, too, with addiction, kind of expanding on my disequilibrium analogy before with Buddhism, I think as well, when you're addicted to something, you're giving up control of yourself to that substance as well, whatever it is. And I think that comes with spiritual consequences. So it doesn't even, this could fit very well with the microtubule consciousness theory, where you have, quantum light oscillations in your microtubules for your consciousness, and that can connect to the the central nervous system and all of that. That could directly connect to and impact it. So it literally could affect you on a spiritual level. But I'd argue for addiction to be spiritual, it doesn't even have to, because if you're giving a substance control over yourself to that extreme, that in of itself, I feel like, is almost a spiritual action.
Yeah. And how I've always viewed drugs and drug use is you're making yourself more susceptible to anything spiritual as well.
Yeah.
So
the ancients used drugs a lot to try to invoke entities and enhance spiritual sensitivities and all of that. And that's the reason why I wanted to talk about drugs a little bit in terms of how it would affect the mind.
We are going to talk about that next, like different cultures and drug use and purposes and all of that. But
perfect.
Do you want me to get into that now, or do you want to do a break? Or
yeah, let's get into it now, and then we'll take a break.
All right. So let me see. We have used substances, like you said, not to just escape, but to encounter.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-Columbian Mesoamerican cultures, I'm going to try to pronounce some of these. We're going to roll with it. Scythians of the Pontic Steppe, ancient Greeks and Romans, and many others have traditions that include hallucinogenic use. Western psychedelic psychotherapy uses psychedelics as a tool to enhance self-understanding and focuses on internal processes. Indigenous shamans, I apologize. Shamans would consume hallucinogens to gain spiritual visions that reveal the cause of illness or imbalance. Then there's syncretic folk religions. They would focus on community bonding, spiritual connection, and worship rather than healing. And then there's a hybrid shamanic therapeutic ritual. So that's more of a fusion of traditional shamanic and Western therapeutic elements. So some other purposes include connecting and communicating with the divine, entering altered states of consciousness, spiritual cleansing, and pain relief. So in these traditions, the altered state wasn't just for fun, but it was for meaning. They had a deep meaning for it. And then it was for, connection, clarity. I'm not sure if they necessarily had the desire to get high.
Yeah, maybe not for all of them. I mean, there are some people that take like drugs to enhance like performance. Like, isn't the
Yeah.
ADHD medication? Forget what it's called. I forget what it's called, but the ADHD medication is like a stimulant, and for people that don't have ADHD, it like really helps you focus or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't sure what you were saying at first.
I'm looking it up. I had to Google
Like
it.
the actual medication?
Yeah, I was trying to look up the specific medication.
I think it starts with an O.
I don't know. You can keep going. I'm just gonna look this up real quick.
Maybe. I may be wrong.
Ritalin.
Ritalin?
Yeah, I think it was Ritalin. There's a lot of different ones for ADHD. Concerta, Daytrana, Adderall. Adderall's probably the one I was actually thinking
it wasn't
of.
an O. It was.
Yeah,
Jeez.
that's okay. It was a vowel. You're close.
It was a vowel.
20% chance.
I swear I know what I'm talking about like 50% of the time.
We're 80% wrong 90% of the time.
Yeah. But see, that's like the whole thing. Like, I don't really care if I'm wrong because it's fine. Like, it's not.
We're doing this off the hip. I don't have. This is unscripted. I mean, you have some like general notes that you follow, and when I'm leading episodes, I have general notes. But we have unscripted conversations. This is just honest and
I have notes
out there.
I have notes because if I don't, I will ramble on about random tangents for like an hour.
Yeah.
So I can't do that. But yes.
What else do you got? Because we do need to do a break soon. But if you,
yeah. So what I was saying was, I'm not sure if they had necessarily a desire to get high. I guess I'll make the assumption that the more you use drugs, the more of a chance you have of getting addicted. So, they obviously didn't really have that science back then to know that.
The ancients were smarter than we give them credit for. A lot of times, I imagine they probably figured that out in some capacity or another.
Yeah,
so.
Like I'm not gonna, say, oh, they know nothing. And
Right. I'm not saying you're saying that. I just know that there's a lot of people out there that think the ancients were dumb because of the theory of evolution.
Like Neanderthal.
The evidence is very much to the contrary. You look at things like Göbekli Tepe, you look at the pyramids, you look at the ziggurats. There's so much stuff out there that the ancients were a lot smarter than we give them credit for. But
and then I just have one last little point to make before the break. But I thought it was interesting. I had a thought where, this comes from something holy in their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a built-in human drive to reach beyond ourselves, to find out if there's more out there or connect to the thing out there that they're connecting with or trying to connect with.
Yeah. It's like how C.S. Lewis argued that he came to the conclusion after being an atheist for a while that there was something more because he had spiritual cravings and because he had he equated to like hunger and thirst. And he's like, you have hunger, so therefore there's food. You have thirst, therefore there's something to drink. You feel a need to breathe, therefore there's air to breathe. You feel longing for the spiritual, therefore there must be a spiritual. We have not yet drifted off to the spiritual here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix. We're still stuck, superimposed into the third dimension with our fourth dimensional spirits. That was close. Darn it. I had such a smooth return there and I just botched it.
No, it was definitely smooth, babe. I loved it.
Smooth as sandpaper. You have a little bit more you wanted to tell us, so over to you.
All right.
Smooth as sandpaper, like my pickup lines.
I like your pickup lines. Anyways.
Yeah, well, you're kind of obligated to.
Nah, not really. I can tell you if I don't like it.
That's true. I already got you, so.
Yeah. So I think that drug use, if you're using it for spiritual reasons, I think it's almost seen as a shortcut to transcendence. So a synthetic way to feel peace, euphoria, power, or unity. But like all shortcuts, the path is unstable.
Mm-hmm.
So what feels like a spiritual awakening at first often decays into the addiction.
Right.
Like I was saying earlier. But maybe the craving for a high isn't just chemical, it's existential. Maybe addiction is just a spiritual signal that there has to be more than this. So
Right. No, I would agree with that. I think that again, it comes down to how you want to define spiritual. If you want to define spiritual as just existential, then yes, absolutely. But I think that there's something that even transcends beyond existential, and existentialism is just the tip of the iceberg to spiritualism via that C.S. Lewis quote I left off in the last break there just a moment ago. Did you have anything else, or is that it?
Yeah, I have a little bit. I already kind of said it, but I'll talk about recovery a tiny bit. But recovery isn't just about detoxing the body, but it's about healing the soul as well. It's about replacing the counterfeit transcendence with something real, and then, whether that's faith, purpose, meditation, deep connection, creative expression. That's why there's like a lot of different recovery journeys that include spirituality in the program. And that's different from religion. So there's a very big distinction between the two, but it's more focusing on meaning and purpose in life and truth. Yeah. So that's why AA and NA and all of them, why they focus on like more of a higher power. That's what they do. They focus on higher power, not, specifically religion and God, but, anything above them.
And the idea of a higher power, it doesn't even necessarily have to be real, but even just the idea of a higher power that is something you can submit yourself to in lieu of addiction, I think gives you ability and power through the belief itself to break addiction in certain instances. So you can believe something and it doesn't even have to be true, but because you believe an entity is there, you are then, and it very well could be there. For me as a Christian, I believe that there's many different types of entities out there, angels, demons, fallen angels, God himself. So you very well could be adhering to one of those in some capacity or another. But even if you want to argue it's purely fictitious, I think that there's value in the belief itself, and that it gives you something, because you've given that power of yourself over to addiction. You're then taking that power back and giving it to something else that can help get your life back on track, at least in ideology.
Yeah.
So, and that's where a lot of the power of the Alcohol Anonymous and all of that is. There are also some downfalls to it. There was one book I had read about it's like psychology. It's not games in terms of a negative connotation, but it's just like, it was like games in terms of like people assume different roles. And it was actually documented for, I think, a couple Alcohol Anonymous groups that they, when they stopped having people come into, like, their specific hierarchies in role and dynamics that people would play with like being addicted to a substance, and Alcohol's Anonymous forces them to change roles.
Yeah,
and that's why it works so well, at least according to this one psychology book I read. And what it is they found with certain Alcohol Anonymous groups, when new people stopped coming in for the alcoholics to be like the rescuers, the whole group collapsed and they all went back to addiction because there was no one else to rescue and for them to switch roles for, which I thought was a very interesting case study to look at that. Obviously, it's a very bad thing to fall back into addiction, but it's a very interesting case study from a psychological perspective to see that, hey, you need a sense of purpose in some capacity, and when that purpose collapses, then addiction comes. And there's a quote I've seen as well. I'm probably not going to get it perfectly. I'm going to try to paraphrase it, but basically, people will use pleasure to fill the void when they don't have purpose.
Absolutely.
And again, this ties into spirituality. So, whether you want to quantify purpose as being a spiritual thing or just a principle that we can loosely define as spiritual, I would define it more as like the tip of the iceberg to spirituality. But any other thoughts that you wanted to interject into all of this, or should I go into some housekeeping stuff.
I'm just trying to find the book and find out what year it was published.
Oh, that book that I was referencing is a very old book. It was from the 50s or 60s. An old source doesn't mean that it's a wrong source. It just means that there could be more information that contradicts it more recently. I've also just seen academic articles that are just flat out incorrect on their assertions on things. Like there's like, I forget the context. I think it was like Gilgamesh or something. Some article asserted one thing, and I was looking at like the translation, and I'm like, no, no.
The lesson I've learned with academic research is take everything with a grain of salt.
Yes.
And dig deeper before putting it in a paper or presentation.
Yes. I had someone quote a source at me on TikTok, and I went and looked at the source, and it was actually an argument for my side and against theirs. And I was like,
within the source they used, or a different source that you found?
Within their own source that they quoted, it argued my side.
So
they just
didn't
took
even
one
read
small
it.
quote out of context. And I'm like, yeah, you clearly did not read this. Try again. And then they never responded.
See, I don't want to laugh and make fun, but like you got to read the source that you're using.
Using Wikipedia as your source of information.
Was it Wikipedia?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, gosh. If it was Wikipedia, I would have been like, okay, never mind. You deserve to get... I'm kidding.
Wikipedia is not a scholarly source.
Please don't use it.
It is a great index for potential scholarly sources. You can go, and that was something my dad always taught me.
You can find
super
ideas on there.
Yeah, you can find, you can go into the footnotes and be like, okay, let me see what this book has to say, and that's probably an academic source, but Wikipedia itself is open domain. Anyone can go in and edit that, so...
Yeah. Like a literal 10-year-old could go in there and probably change something and say something completely false about anything. Yeah.
You got to be careful with ChatGPT too, because ChatGPT will cite Wikipedia as its sources a lot too, and so it's you can't. And then ChatGPT also relies on the inputted information, which can be outdated or just flat out wrong too. Mm-hmm. So you always have to do your own research. Don't trust ChatGPT or Wikipedia or any other models out there of AI. Do your own research, but those can be tools to help you and aid the researching process, but you just can't do that alone and be good. So, anything else?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this book. I don't have much knowledge on the dynamics specifically in Alcoholics Anonymous, but or Narcotics Anonymous, but I'm gonna look into that more.
Yeah,
but I'm a little hesitant to fully trust a book from the 50s, but I will.
Yeah, I'll have to see.
I will.
Case studies are timeless, though. So, if he actually cites the case study, which I imagine he did, you can go back and look at that original case study, and you can draw your own conclusions from the case study, even.
If I have access to it. See, can I go on a little mini rant?
Sure.
I hate the fact that when I'm researching for school, most of the articles are restricted access, or you have to pay for them or something, and they are outrageous.
Yeah.
It's $50 for one little journal article.
That's wild.
It's insane.
That's wild that GCU doesn't cover that.
Oh no, they do.
Oh, they do? Okay.
Yeah, I have, but it's not for every single
right.
They don't have subscriptions to literally anything, everything. But they have a library and online library, and they can search databases and everything, but they don't have access to everything. So I search by myself outside of the library, and half the time I click on articles and it's only the abstract is available.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says restricted access and you got to pay. And I'm like, man, I don't want to spend $50 on one journal article that I'm going to use once for one assignment.
The urge for a bachelor's program to just take one quote and not care about context and apply it to your paper is always very strong. Oh, I definitely did not do that at any point in my bachelor degree. Just to be like, I got to hit like 8 sources. That here's this one quote that I didn't read the full source from, but I totally did. Wink, wink.
But see, okay, so you just admitted to doing the thing that you just made fun of the other person for doing.
For a bachelor's degree,
Well, yeah.
yes. For actual like research on subjects that are like important, because a lot of times you just write papers for like nonsense, especially for like 100, 200 level classes in college.
Yeah, but it's still research.
Yeah, but I mean, at a certain point, it's just like, So,
Are you talking about like gen eds?
yeah, I'm talking like gen ed level stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like stuff that actually is like myth related or anything. I do much deeper research, like very painstakingly deep research for stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like general like gen ed level classes, like, oh yeah, like I've definitely have used like an occasional source in like some of my papers that I've written where it's like, yeah, like I read like 2 or 3 lines and this looks good. Oh, hey, yeah, I think that's,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, that's my book.
Okay. I don't know how ethical this is.
Oh, that's a subset of it. That's the games
it's-
alcoholics play. That's a specific subset.
Is it?
Yeah, the book title is The Games People Play. So that's like either an article or the excerpt on alcoholics.
This is a whole book.
Oh, so he wrote a whole second book on alcoholism. That's cool.
Limited preview. Man. All right.
That's cool.
Never mind. Okay. Oh, this was 1971. All right.
Okay, yeah, some more recent than 1950s.
5th printing 1972. Okay. Well, that's a tiny bit better than 50s. But yeah, so it seems like he kind of came back and did a little more research or something on it. But
I was guessing on the 1950s. It might have been 1960s or 70s.
Oh, it might have been this one?
It's not that book, 'cause that's not the title. But
okay.
yeah, that's Games Alcoholics Play. The title of the book I'm referencing is The Games People Play.
Let me click on his.
But yeah, you have to look into him a little bit more.
Yeah, it's just that one.
Anything else you wanted to say? We're due for a break
think
here.
Well, no, I think you just wanted some housekeeping things, and I know you're about to make fun of me for something, but
Yeah, that's okay. We will be back in just a moment. And we have returned here on Musings on Mysteries and the Mythical Matrix, where we always check our sources.
please do.
Yes, please do. Don't use Wikipedia. I will say I do always take sources for MQuad very seriously. I do extensive research to make sure that everything I'm getting is accurate, and I do my best to come back whenever I learn more information and correct it. So
I'm kind of curious to see how many people actually click on my links that I provide for the evidence that I have and
probably
actually
no one.
read through it. Well, Steven,
Steven,
he might.
Yeah, he actually asked me in the Discord because I finally got him to join the Discord. He actually asked me for the quantum consciousness stuff for his
Awesome.
What is it, the panpsychism theory. He
Oh,
had
yeah.
he had an idea how that might connect to it that he's working on, and he wanted to dig into that a little bit more.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he
That's
had
exciting.
asked me for that. Yeah. All right, so housekeeping stuff. This is going back a little ways. I'm going to talk about the Septuagint first and why I came to the conclusion I did on the Septuagint dates for the patriarchs in Genesis 5 being probably more accurate than the Masoretic text, because that was something from the Is the Bible Viable series that came up. And Harrison brought up a point that the Masoretic text was more preserved by people with theological interests. And my approach to it is that the Septuagint is older, and theological preservation can still come with its own type of bias. And so I just adhere to more of the historical angle for what's older, because that makes sense to me. And having a dad that has a PhD in history, the historic method is very much ingrained into my DNA. And so that's just where I feel more comfortable placing my cards. And that view might evolve in the future, but I did just want to clarify that. The reason why it took so long for me to get back to this, because we batch recorded like 3 of those episodes back to back. And yeah, so this is like the first one we're actually sitting down, and I've had some time to think about this. I do want to kick out a couple questions to the listeners because I had someone mention to me that they were wanting hats. And so if there's enough interest for hats where people are like, yes, I want hats, I will do an order of hats and I will figure out a way to set up some kind of shop or something on MQuad. But I need to know if there's like a number of people interested. Otherwise, it'll be a while before I make that investment. So if you want hats, comment, email, join the Discord, let us know. And I can make that happen. Also, just interested if there's any listeners out there that are listening to this far, would any of you be interested for like an ad-free experience for like a membership thing? Like paying anywhere from like $2 to $10 a month to get access to MQuad episodes, not when they release on the normal schedule, but whenever we record them and I upload them. So that could be like you get access to like 1-2 days early, or it could be one like that you get access to the whole month set like in like a day basically, and you don't have to wait like everyone else. And then that would also be ad free for those that are listening on any podcasting platforms except YouTube. So if you are interested in that as well, let me know. Again, like I'm wanting to tailor the experience to what is of most interest to the listeners, but I need people to let me know if they have interest for things, because if I don't hear feedback, then I don't know you're wanting those things. So
I'm not biased, but the hats are pretty cool looking.
the hats are really cool.
They look pretty cool.
They came out really well. I'm very satisfied. But yes, we have Cordell got a hat because I had one left from that order. And then I had someone else asking me about a hat, and I'm like, well, hey, I've put out there on the show. Let me know, you know. So I know there's one person out there that would get a hat. If I know that there's like another like 4 or 5 people, then I'll do a hat order in the not so distant future.
I'm also keeping track of like funny quotes and stuff.
Yeah,
for potential
t-shirts.
shirts.
And Steven has said he'd design art for us if we need as well. So
That'd be awesome.
So yeah,
We need a shirt that says "Be a Steven."
Yes, we do.
I feel like I already said that on the show, but
did,
I will never
yes.
stop saying it.
Yes, be a Steven.
Be a Steven.
Yes, be curious and
Yes.
know how to do good research and how the historical method works, because apparently some academics don't know how the historical method works. Anywho, we'll shift gears here before I get on a soapbox rant.
Yeah, to make fun of me.
Yes, because something funny happened. So
Oh,
listeners know, I think I've mentioned a couple times that I'm digging into learning Sumerian. I've been doing it for about 3 months now. And it's a beast of a language, but it's fun. I enjoy it. I'm probably about 30% of the way, 45% of the way through the manual. I'm going to do a reread of it just to help it all sink in, because it's a very complex language.
And you're being too modest. You're not just learning Sumerian. You're like
I was building
reviewing like 5 languages at once. It's insane.
We were sitting in the car today driving, and like you were like listening to me like do like language stuff, and you're like, okay, that one's like Hebrew, and then like, what's that? I'm like, it's German. I'm reviewing it because I feel too rusty since, you know, it's been years since I lived there. And you're like, what other languages are you doing? You're already doing 4. I'm like, Greek. I just started Greek.
I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, so I've discovered a passion of learning languages. So yeah, I guess I'll explain that real quick actually here, since we're, you know, kind of ranting a little bit. But yeah, so I decided to get the Sumerian book. I have a rudimentary understanding of Hebrew, and I'm learning more of that, both modern and biblical Hebrew. I was moderately fluent in German when I was a kid, and I'm working on building that one back up again. My biggest issue is vocab and understanding the right genders and cases and everything. So I'm trying to work on enhancing that a little bit more passively. And then doing Akkadian as well. I just decided to pull the trigger on that. And you actually decided, as we were talking, you decided to join for learning Akkadian, which is pretty awesome.
It's a love-hate relationship with me.
It's mostly a hate-avoid relationship.
Yeah.
And then
It's toxic.
Just this last week, because of stuff we're going to talk about on the next episode, I started learning Greek, and I'm already annoyed at the Cyrillic alphabet because the capital and lowercase letters are different, and it was throwing me off on like the first lesson. I'm like, because like I'm used to like Omega looking like the O with like the weird lines at the bottom, and I recognize that, but the lowercase is like a 3 on its side, like with the tongs facing up.
The tongs.
Yeah, I don't know. the dad thing when you're about to grill, you clap the tongs together like a crab.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I don't have a sound effect board
The
for that.
click.
Yeah, the click. All dads do it. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff on the next episode. I'm going to come back because I've had, what is it now, 2 months to just not do a single podcast episode prep and just research. And I have made some incredibly wild discoveries. We're not going to talk about it now, but you will not want to miss the next episode. If you thought the Anzu or Lilith episodes were good, this next episode is going to be on steroids. It's like, and the scariest thing, I will tease this, scariest thing is I accidentally foreshadowed this in MQuad art for the page. And I went back and I was making all these huge discoveries and I was freaking out over it. And then I looked at the MQuad page and I literally see my discovery staring me in the face. And I'm like, it's been on the MQuad platform this whole time. I'm just like, I was kind of derailed a little bit on that one. But shoot, what was I gonna? Yeah, the next episode is episode 61, The Fractured Council, Enki, Enlil, and the Secrets of the Mountains. You will not want to miss that one. That will be the beginning of season 4. Season 3 will be a little bit short here since we're kind of wrapping up the Psych and Spirit series with this episode. So you don't have any other episodes planned, right? This is the last one from you.
This is the last one.
Yeah. And then you wanted to do a light and sound frequency one at some point you had mentioned. But,
yeah.
down the road.
I could do that.
Like 3 months, 4 months.
Electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah. But yeah, so the funny thing that happened that I
Dang it. I thought for sure you were going to forget and you were going to do your closeouts and I was going to get off scot-free.
No. Yeah, it was funny. So we were going over Akkadian vocab. And so it was the word uznum for those of you that are interested. And so uznum has a double meaning. It means wisdom, but it also means ear, which I think is interesting that it implies like it can mean like an anatomical ear or it can mean the concept of wisdom. And since wisdom is correlated to hearing, I think that's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of nuances like that in ancient languages. But you were trying to guess the meanings of it, and I was going to have you guess both meanings. And so you got
For more context, I have flashcards, okay?
Yeah. So
and I saw the word, and I was trying to guess it.
So we're on that for our vocab, and you get the wisdom part, and I'm like, you're right, but there's something more, and you're like trying to like, no, you got the ear part. That's what it was. You got ear right because you guessed it was ear, but you didn't guess the wisdom part. And I'm like trying to guide you along, and I said it's something that goes in your ear, and you're like, earbuds. Yes, a 4,000-year-old language in 2000 BC has a word for earbuds. We both just started dying on the bed laughing for a good minute.
Yeah, I provided you a lot of entertainment with that one. In my defense.
You panicked. It was funny.
No, like in my defense, I was tired, okay?
Yeah, you're already working on a master's and now you're trying to learn Akkadian and you don't speak. You've studied a little German and a little Spanish and that's it. So, no, it's
like in high school.
It's impressive. And I will say, I can make fun of you for that. No one is allowed to make fun of you for that on the MQuad platform unless they are learning Akkadian or a harder language.
I don't care if anyone makes fun of me.
Okay, well, that's my rule. It's like if you're going to make fun of someone, you better be doing something that they're doing.
A master in it.
Yeah, you better be doing something that they're doing or harder.
I don't care.
Cordell's learning Japanese, so he can make fun of you. But
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's all I've got. So, anything else from you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh no.
Well, no.
Okay.
In my defense, I'm tired.
Earbuds. All right. The Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link will be in the show notes or description. It does take a lot of time to do research and to prep all of these episodes. So if you're able to support the show at all with a donation, it definitely helps. A $25 donation or more will get you mentioned as a producer and the subsequent show. At the very least, if you can't financially support, totally fine if you can or don't want to. I 100% understand that and respect it. But at the very least, if you could share the podcast with someone, if you can't support us financially, helping get the word out about the podcast and building up the listener base is equally helpful. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube handles are all m.quad.musings. Facebook, Musings on Mysteries, Mythical Matrix. You can always email us at m.quad.musings@gmail.com. We want to hear your questions, concessions, contentions, confessions, your snide remarks, whatever you like about the show, whatever you don't like about the show. We want your feedback. Discord server link is also in the show notes. I actually have a new channel there as well where I share the discoveries that I make as I make them oftentimes. So if you want to see like how my research process goes and the connections I make and like follow that process, you can actually do that in a channel where I'll occasionally post things in there breaking stuff down for you that will end up in the show. So if you want some inside baseball, you can watch that evolve. And that's about it. So whether you've been listening on the earth with the mortals and the stars of heaven with Enoch and the cherubim, or
Down in Sheol,
we thank you for quantumly transcending time to join us for this concluding episode to the Psych and Spirit series and season 3 of M Quad. And we hope that you have a good rest of your night.